Know me. So my name is Barry Cranford. Sorry for everyone that's heard this a few times. Yeah, if you don't know me or my business, I am the founder of the LJC, and I also run RecWorks, which is a tech recruitment agency. So at RecWorks, we're all about really trying to find ways that recruitment can be a force for good in the tech industry beyond just getting people jobs. And so what we mean by that is that we're not just looking to help get your next role, but we're hoping to help people find a career that they really do have a passion for, and something they really do love, or find what they love within the career that they've already got, and then help them go all in on it. So to give you a quick taste, we've built communities like the LJC of over 10,000 people now, run about 800 events, and made over 3,000 mentor introductions. It's all done completely for free, and the idea is that we place developers in companies and use a bit of that revenue to drive initiatives like this. So this year we've been playing with something that's a little bit different in these ladder groups, is what we're calling them. And the idea is to try and get people that are on a specific ladder to go from one place to another place and bring them all together. And that's the aspiring speakers group that this is all involved with. So as part of that, we've put 50 new people on stage now through these groups, and we're running another one today, and constantly looking for new people to get involved. So if you're interested in getting involved in a future event, then please do sign up. Please do let us know. Anyway, with that, that's my brief introduction out the way. One other thing that I will say is that we're always interested in feedback. So if you're looking at the talks today, some of them are slightly more experienced speakers, but please do share feedback. Let them know words of support, anything that you enjoyed or stood out is really, really useful. Anyway, so we're ready now. I'm going to hand you over to our first presenter, which is Daniel Tallentire. So Daniel.
I was on mute, sorry. Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Tallentire. I'm Technical Director of Parker Software. Thanks for listening to my talk. I hope you find it interesting. Sorry if I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a while since I've done any talks. Okay, so I'll just start sharing now. Share that. Technical issues. So I had a one-to-one with Bob a few weeks ago, and he said to me that he felt a bit like a jack of all trades, and he wasn't sure where it was going to take him. And it made me think about this in a little bit more detail and question, because I'm a jack of all trades, and I went to see how this made me feel, what that meant to me. And so what I really thought about it, that it isn't a master of none, it's a master of learning. Because learning is what's really important about being able to do all the different components about being a developer or working in a business. So a little bit about me, which will add a bit of color to where I've come from and what I've done. So I started off in computer science. I've just done everything. I was selling computer parts and then working through into a software company. So I've worn all the different hats in the business. I've worked in the commercial side, I've worked in the sales side, I've worked in the marketing piece, but I'm mainly been focused on tech. So I've done tech support, infrastructure and development. I've pitched to some of the biggest companies in the world, and then down to the smallest. So we deal with from Ford Motor Company down to a one-person garden services company. And that variety that I get, that I can grasp hold of any different component in the business, and I can really get attached to it. And that's a really big benefit you get from being a jack of all trades, is that you can fit in and you can have that variety. And that's something that I love. I get to do a different thing every day. So why was I interested in doing this particular talk? So the question from Bob about being a jack of all trades, it triggered also some discussions I'd had in some mentoring meetings recently, where I was asked by some developers as to what the next step in their career was. How do you pick a specialism, and where do you go, and which specialism? Should I go into architecture? Should I go into mobile development? Should I focus on back end more? And I'm usually answering this as that it isn't necessary to specialize unless you want to. So if you have a particular passion for something, a certain part of development, a certain part of business, then go for it, unless it's going to be detrimental to your career, or if you don't care if it's detrimental to your career. But you can go for that and grasp that, but don't feel that it's a requirement. Don't feel that it's a requirement to take that specialism and move towards it, because it's not. You can still get ahead, you can still do anything, you can have a wide and varied career, you can go further and become more senior if that's what you want to do, and be a generalist. In some ways, if you're inside a small business, it's easier if you're a generalist, because there's often different roles that come up that you have to take on those different roles. Somebody's got to do it, and it will go to the person who puts up the hand and says, yeah, that sounds interesting, I'll give that a go. So we often get asked about this thing for full stack, and so where does that fit into what I'm talking about? And the way that I view full stack is, I think, it's less of this big stack of burgers that is just shoved together, and it's more of being a complete meal. So you've got a bit of salad on the side, you've got something that actually fits together nicely and is really nicely presented. So we don't want to just grab a couple of different tech tools and stack them on top of each other and say, oh yeah, I know React, I know Spring, I can do MySQL, yeah, Kubernetes, yeah, that's great. No, you want to be able to understand what you're building. It's about how you build solutions and how you communicate with other people what you build, and that's really that part of being that generalist that gives you all those pieces, rather than saying I can learn any tech, which is definitely a big part of it. Yes, you can learn any tech, but I understand that bigger picture. So the most important skills for being a generalist, the biggest one for me is the problem solving and problem analysis. This tells you where you need to go, what next step you need to take. So once you've analyzed that problem, you understand what you need to learn, or do I already know it, or does somebody else already know it? So that communication, those are the three key skills. I understand what tools I need to use. Do I have the tools in my bag already? And how can I learn those things, from who? One aspect that I've sort of touched on as part of this is that this idea of expertise, and this 10,000 hours to be an expert. And I don't know if people are familiar with this, but David Epstein wrote a book called The Sports Gene, and he famously said that within 10,000 hours, then you can be an expert in anything, whether it's a footballer, violinist, programmer, anything. This has been sort of widely spread around, but he's recently recanted this and said that this only really works in kind environments. So like the game of golf is a kind environment because it's very focused. It's very predictable. You can do the same thing over and over again. You spend 10,000 hours playing golf, you can be an expert at playing golf. Wicked environments, this doesn't work. So the game of football and software development, being a technical specialist, you've got to understand all these different things in your environment. It's a wicked thing. It's not something where you can say, I'm going to spend 10,000 hours doing programming and I'm instantly going to be an expert. You need to have a range of experience to do that. I think for learning, I always learn through doing, and this is part of how I am. It's not the same for everybody. But Hermina Ibarra, who was a professor at London Business School, she said, we learn who we are in practice, not in theory. So that means try stuff and see what it does, see what it means to you. And that can give you your next step, where you need to move next. Try something a little bit different. So I'm kinesthetic. I love to try different things. But if you're not kinesthetic, if you don't learn by doing, then maybe learn by talking to different people. If it's people in your business, people outside your business, to try to get an idea, a perspective on something else, a different direction that you could take. I've got some references on the end, but you don't have to read them. I did actually do a little bit of research for this, and read some real articles, which was good. But thanks very much for listening to me talk about generalism and specialism.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Daniel. Really interesting perspective, since so many people tend to go down the specializing route. So yeah, very interesting. Did anyone have any questions to throw at Daniel after that?
Hey Daniel, I've got a question here from my New York apartment. Well, thank you for the talk. Now the debate generalist versus specialist is pretty old, and I think at least in economic science the theory is that specialization has led to an explosion in productivity. So why do you think that doesn't really apply to software? I mean, if you think about the generalist, backend, front end, mobile, web, that's a lot of stuff to know. So how can you keep, up to date with all this stuff, and still be productive? That just seems like a tall order.
Yeah, and I think thanks for the question. That's really, really great, because I think it's not it's not the same as knowing a lot about one thing or knowing about a lot about lots of things. It's about the attitude and the way that you apply yourself to those things. Because I am a master of no things except for learning. So I wouldn't claim that I deeply know enough about those things that I can solve them instantly, but I know what I need to do, where I need to go to solve those problems. And specialists are an important thing in my tool set. So I have people I know are specialists who I will use, and specialist websites. We've got the internet now. We're in a very different situation than when we needed specialists to be able to expand the economy. People needed to have that really deep knowledge. That deep knowledge is now available to everyone through the internet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel, for that. Thanks, Carsten. I feel like that is a conversation that could go on. I think this is easier talk that we could expand on in the future. So yeah, great. Dom, would you mind just popping the feedback link on the chat? So again, if anyone's got any feedback, even if it's just a few words, anything stood out to you, that would be wonderful. It's largely multiple choice. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be amazing. But Obi, are you all set? Your screen sharing okay?
Yeah, good to go. Yeah, can everyone see this? Yeah. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Obi Ossai. Hope you've all had a good week. I'm a product owner and I'm no expert. I've only been practicing for about 4 years now. So yeah, I just really want to share my journey about learning about Agile and things I've had to learn and unlearn throughout that process up to this point in my career. So I thought this is a good platform to share about that, considering that, IT professionals are here as well. So yeah. So so be Agile. Just for context, if there's anyone who doesn't know what Agile is all about, just run through brief history. Agile is a software development lifecycle. Prior to that, there were more conventional SDLCs, the incremental delivery, the waterfall lifecycle, V model, and all those ones, which were great for delivering products, but they had major problems. Like there was so much lead time before delivering a product, and they weren't adaptable to an ever-changing market that we see today in the digital sector. So Agile emerged as a solution for that. And basically, Agile preaches individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So within a development team, cross-functional teams, not just engineering team and the QA team working separately, but everyone really working together. Not just sticking to the Jira board, but really collaborating to understand and empathize with each other and producing the solution. It also preaches working software over comprehensive documentation. So with the more conventional SDLCs, there was rigorous requirement engineering that went into gathering the requirements that could take months and some projects, I'm sure, even up to a year, to gather those requirements before implementing that into a working software. And that was a lot of time for changes to happen in the business, new technologies to come and disrupt things, different factors to just come at play. So Agile says, get a working software as soon as possible. Then customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So getting away from the paperwork and being very user-centric, putting the customer in front of the whole product and the project, getting the customer involved in the whole development process as well is very relevant. And responding to change over following a plan. So I'm sure a lot of you can appreciate how so many things can go wrong. So many things that weren't anticipated can just happen. and it's important to be able to respond to change. So Agile embraces change rather than following a plan. And in internalizing the Agile principles, it's been very beneficial to, use the wise words of Bruce Lee, who says, empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water in a cup, it becomes a cup. If you put water in a bottle, it becomes a bottle. If you put water in a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Now water can flow, it can crash. Be water, my friend. So in his wise words, he really helped me internalize what it means to be agile. Be like water. If I'm put in certain environments, I need to adapt to that environment as fast as water would. So thanks, Bruce Lee. So like I said, I've gone through my own process and evolution with Agile. There was the old me who was this guy. Yeah. So that's me, like facing all the uncontrollable things that could happen, all the changes that happen during an IT project, facing it head on. And I like to believe this is the new me. Yeah, I know I can't quite be, water, but I can get a surfboard and like ride the waves of all the challenges and changes that happen. So like my first experience was with Scrum, and while I knew the guidelines of Scrum, I didn't really appreciate what Agile was. So I was always by the book, product owner must do this, developers must do that. I don't have to be in all the daily Scrum meetings, like the ceremonies, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't giving the best of myself, and I wasn't being as productive and as resourceful and giving the most value as I could give on projects in a team. So not until I took a step back to really appreciate what Agile was and incorporated that into Scrum did I start to mature in my career. So we have a lot of Agile frameworks out there. We have extreme programming, we have Scrum, we have Safe, we have ShapeUp, Kanban, and so forth. And I feel these are all best practices that are very relevant and very successful in certain environments. Like I would argue that extreme programming, is better like where you see programmers working directly with the users. Is better for in environments where they are more mature developers who can empathize properly with the customers. Then you have Safe, which is a scaled up version of Scrum, and Scrum is only going to be relevant until the company grows to a certain level and is managing so many products. So I believe new Agile frameworks are due to come out. Just depends on the environment, and things are constantly changing. New technologies are coming into play. Even during this pandemic, I feel a framework might just come out of this pandemic that teaches us how to be more agile while working remotely. So yeah, that's all I have today. Thanks for listening, everyone. Yeah, any questions?
Thanks, Obi. That was great. That was great. Any questions for Obi on that?
I have one, if that's okay.
I
think the talk's very well timed, actually, because the new Scrum Guide's coming out next week. And I wondered, given your previous experience of Scrum, is there anything, given it is going to be updated and changing, that you would change yourself?
Well, what exactly are you referring to? Like, do you mean, what do you mean exactly?
I mean, is there anything particular when you've used Scrum in practice that you think you would rather change because you don't think it works?
Well, I think that falls back to what I was trying to say. I feel it's quite dangerous to stick to the guidelines of Scrum. So there's been certain times I've been on projects where, it's getting to the deadline and we sort of switch to a more Kanban style. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just very, very important to appreciate. I'm quite biased to Scrum. I feel like those meetings, I wouldn't change anything necessarily, but I think it's important not to be so strict with the guidelines and to be flexible, a bit flexible in implementing. I don't know if I've answered your question properly, but I'm not sure.
No, I think it's a fair point in the flexibility. I think that's one of the pitfalls I see as well. Everyone thinks it's a prescribed checklist of I have to do all this.
Yes.
Your ideas of embracing a bit of flexibility and adapting things to your needs is definitely good insight.
Because like people who are more like, there's the argument, people who use Kanban say like there's a lot of waste with Scrum, like all those times with the product backlog refinement takes a lot of time. You don't need to do that. So I think it's quite important, and it depends on the kind of product you're developing as well. Like proprietary products require a lot of quality and all of that, you know, so it depends, and I feel like you just have to be adaptable to the times and the environment.
I think that, as both of you said, the importance to have in mind that they are guidelines, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's why so many people adapt Scrum to their organization, to their culture. We use it in my office, in my team, and I don't have any complaint, but we adapt a lot. You know, you don't have it to follow it in a strict way. So I think that's the advantage of the guidelines. They guide you where you can adapt, you can change.
Exactly. I've had certain conversations with some product owners as well, like fellow like IT professionals, and I've yet to see a perfect implementation of Scrum. Like there's always something that changes, you know, right there with the meet. There's always something that changes. So yeah, I agree.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrea, Carly, and Obi. Okay, again, everyone, if you can add some feedback, that'd be great. We've had a bunch through already. Sam, Peter, Kabir, Jim, thank you very much. Anyone else, that would be wonderful. So Carly, a nice segue into yourself. Are you good? You're screen sharing, aren't you? Yeah, your co-host.
Not yet. We should do that, shouldn't we? And I should probably close that as well. Don't think you guys want to see that one of my apps is yelling at me. Okay. Cool. Okay, everyone should hopefully be able to see. So I'm looking at it specifically from a front-end tech perspective, but I'm sure others from other domains would agree that learning is just part of our jobs, really. And what I've found is that it's really difficult to juggle keeping up to date while working at the same time. And then career breaks just throw that all out the window and make it even more difficult. So what I want to take some time today to walk through is share some tips that I have for how you can learn tech through work, leave, life events, and beyond. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Carly. I am a senior software engineer at Morgan Stanley. As I mentioned at the start, front end is definitely my expertise. But in addition, I'm a mum to a noisy and energetic, well, now 15-month-old, which obviously keeps me busy, but I also regularly contribute on Twitter and Medium too. So you can check me out there if you want to follow some of my ideas. So we all spend a large portion of our time working, and Eurostat actually estimates that the expected working life duration of EU workers in 2019 was going to be 35.9 years, which if you work in a domain such as ours can be difficult because that's a long time to keep learning. And it can be difficult to remain engaged all through that time, especially if, like myself, you're a front-end engineer. And with the massive explosion of different web frameworks and different techniques, particularly over the last 10 years, it makes the ecosystem really difficult to follow. And I find at times it's really impossible to keep up with. And that was just when I was working. Then when I went on maternity leave, it actually got harder rather than easier. And although my experiences that I'm going to talk about today are specific to that, we need to remember that there's so many other different reasons that you might want to take a gap. And I've only depicted a subset of those here. So the question I bet you're all asking right now is, how can we remain engaged with tech learning through these periods of work and leave? So let me share the tips that I have based on how it worked out for me. So the first thing to note is it's natural when you're heading off in a period of leave, especially if it's the first time, that you want to set a few goals and feel accomplished. And I did just that in 2019. But when I went on leave, I made the most common mistake where I set these really large, unrealistic goals. I committed that I was going to learn React, I was going to write a book, and I was going to make my way through at least part of my reading list. So I'll quickly ask, how many of those do you think I managed to complete? Yeah, if you said 0, you were right. That book remains unwritten to this day. And I didn't learn React, actually. And I got through one fiction book in 6 months. My goals were just too big, and I need to hold my hands up and say that that's what happened. So in my organization, we use the SMART framework for goal setting. And it would probably be a good idea to have used this for setting my own personal goals, even though we always kind of synonymize it with work. And I'd in particular call out embracing A for achievable. It's okay to scale a goal up, and we need to be all right with that. So the next thing, which Dan did mention earlier, is that you might have a different learning style. And when I was at school, we covered the VARC model to try and help us identify what styles worked for us. But as a front-end engineer, we tend to default to books and tutorials all the time, and that doesn't always work. And I certainly have found that, because over the last year, I've rated different techniques for learning, and I've rated them from downright easy green to absolutely impossible red, would never do it again. And while I could share loads of stories about why some things worked better than others, the one I want to call out today is podcasts. So I found those to be really straightforward, because I could actually do something else at the same time, like housework or take my son for a walk. And as a front-end engineer, in addition to framework and UX specific podcasts, there's tons of other themes that you can help apply to your role, such as psychology, for example. So it's definitely worth not just thinking about the format, but the topics as well. Can other topics better inform how you work as an engineer? This might sound strange, next one, to talk about in learning, but it's important to know when to hit the pause button. To continue to enjoy learning, which we're going to have to do for a long time yet, you need to know when to take a break. So I put tech learning to the back of my mind when I had my maternity leave, but I also did the same thing at the start of March this year, due to circumstances that we're all familiar with, because I was trying to figure out how to juggle work and looking after a tiny human at the same time. And if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't enjoy learning as much as I still do now. So I'm glad that I did. And my final tip, again, building on what Dan said, was to keep experimenting. Front-end development, if you're not in it, can be quite an opinionated domain. And what looks good or works in terms of a workflow for one person or one tool isn't the same necessarily for another. And that same lesson applies to learning. So try things out, be okay to maybe try them again, but sometimes it might not work, and that's okay. So how can we make learning tech a bit more manageable with life? So as a reminder, the things that worked for me was set achievable goals. SMART is not just reserved for work. Think about embracing different learning formats depending on what you want to consume. Know when to take a break and keep experimenting, because things don't always go right. So we do have some time for questions, which I'm happy to take. But at this moment, I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me today. And do reach out if you'd like to find out more.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carly. Really appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions then for Carly on her presentation?
Yeah, I have it's not exactly a question. It was a great presentation, because at the moment I'm trying to learn a new skill, and yeah, I've tried different methods. As you said, you have to experiment, because what works for one person doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And I think maybe one thing that you could add to your presentation is don't give up when something doesn't work for you, because that's what we tend to do. A while ago, I tried just some technique, didn't work for many reasons, and then I was frustrated, and I kind of gave up. And now I was able to sum up some energy again, and I'm trying again, but it's really tough when you experiment something and it doesn't work. And where did you get strength to try again, to try another technique, another thing? It's really hard. But it was a great, I liked your table. I'm going to do it to make a table for me to take notes about what worked and not worked. I think this helps.
I'm glad. Thank you for your feedback. I think that's a good point, actually, around the trying to remain a bit optimistic. I think especially this year, my Twitter feed, I don't know about if yours is the same, but at certain points in the year, it's been littered with, we're all at home all the time. This is a great time to do self-improvement and learn a new skill. And it can feel really pressured that you've just got to keep cramming more and more information into your head. So I do like what you're saying in terms of, that optimism to keep trying, and don't also look at those kind of things when people are saying you need to be learning all the time. It's about figuring out what skills you want to learn and what's going to work. So I do thank you for your comments. They're amazing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrea. Thank you, Carly. That was great. So we have now Steve. Steve, are you out there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, you're a co-host, so you should be able to screen share. Just a very quick thing before. I don't think that our final speaker is able to log on. So if anybody out there, I know this is ridiculous timing, but if anybody out there would like to give a lightning talk, if anyone has a particular thing they're working on that they'd love to talk about, completely unprepared for 5 or 7 minutes, or yeah, just wants to make awareness of anything, then just send me a direct message, and yeah, and we'll set that up. But yeah, without further ado, then Steve, Paul.
Right, thank you. Let me just start the sharing. So now you can see all my slides, can't you? So yeah, right, there we go. So let me introduce this, and then I'll introduce me. But at 5:38 this morning, I am up and responding to a Slack message from Barry saying, hey, could you do a thing about the LJC Young Conference at this lightning talk thing? So I went, yeah, okay then. And so I then found a little gap and I put some slides together. And that's what unconferences and lightning talks are all about. So the LJC, every year we run an unconference. And for those of you who haven't been to an unconference, they are different from normal conferences because everything is driven by the community. And that means content too. So normally what happens is that on the day you turn up, and we have a great session at the beginning where we work out what people would like to hear and talk about. We put that on big stickies, stick them on the wall, and group them and divide them, and people just go off and have a good time talking about things they care about. This time, because we can't do that physically, we're going to do an unconference. So we are literally trying out for the first time an unconference in a virtual manner. We think we have the tech sorted out, and so we think we can offer you the same experience almost that we'd have face-to-face, but maybe with a little twist on it. So there's the QR code if you want to sign up. That's a picture of the real T-shirt. Currently we only have one, but there we go. And you can sign up to come to the Young Conference for £5 because obviously we have a little bit of cost for these things. Or you can pay the whacking great amount of £10 and get a T-shirt as well. And it's not your cheap T-shirt, it's a good quality T-shirt, courtesy of Adopt OpenJDK. We are only posting the T-shirts to people in the UK and Ireland because of costs, but there we go. Now, why would you want to come to one of these things? Well, there's a whole bunch of really good reasons that if you've been to one, you'll go, yeah, that's right. So you meet people. It's just the fabulous opportunity to meet people that you may have heard about or that you just bump into, and you just find by talking to people in these sessions that you have common interests. You can just see we have so much fun with these things. There's pictures of the little stickies that we stick on the wall. Now we've yet to actually figure out how to actually get them to stay there over the period of time. But it's all content driven. You turn up, you say what you want to care about, what you want to talk about, and that gets organized. So you'll meet new people, that's for sure. It's a really good way of learning things quickly. One of the comments you get about on conferences is that people believe quite often they can learn more about a particular subject in one day at a conference than they might learn in the whole week at a full conference, because of the ability to interact with experts and people who know what they're who've been there before. So next slide. There we go. It is about having fun. Yes, you get to sit in a room, but you do get to talk to everybody, and it's not all like lecture theatres as these pictures show, but these are the only pictures I have. But literally, it's a group of people, whether you're in a room or you're sitting in the corridor. It's just have conversations with people who care about the same thing or interested in learning the same thing. So here finally is how it's going to work. So it's different this time. So I would encourage you to take the QR code or the link and go and sign up and buy yourself a nice t-shirt. Then once you do that, you'll get a link, and then we'd like you to join the LJC Slack. And there is a specific channel there for you to just turn up and start talking about what you'd like to hear, and respond to anybody else who's got suggestions. Between now and the unconference, which is the 12th of December, so just literally 1 day short of a month away, we're going to run a couple of tech checks, because we want to make sure that everybody who comes along has smoothed out all the technical wrinkles that might occur. And obviously we'll run some Q&As at the same time. They're probably going to be on the Fridays from now. Friday the 11th, which is the day before, we're going to run a special thing where we're going to ask everybody to, well, prep all the content, and we will ask people to vote. And then on the day, 12 o'clock on the day, we'll just start. Now, normally on conference, you do the voting on the day, but because we don't want to have people sitting in front of a video screen for a whole day, we split it in half, so it gives us time to decide what the content is going to be. And because this is virtual, as you can see on the right, there's all sorts of things that we could do this time that we might not have done before at unconference. So certainly we're interested in what it is that you would like to talk about, but we'd also like to get information about demos you might want to give or you would like to see, small talks. So if you've seen something that you're interested in, then you let us know, put it on the Slack channel. We'll reach out and see whether we can get that person to turn up and give the talk again. Ditto with just people you think would be good to have there. If you know somebody or you've seen somebody, we can always ask. And because it's virtual, anybody from anywhere in the world can turn up. I'm even open to doing product pitches, technical product pitches, of course, but we normally frown on those because it takes up valuable time. And of course, it's a product pitch. But actually, there are products nowadays in the new world that you might care about. So you might want to see the latest bits in, say, in IntelliJ, or you might care about some AWS stuff. If there's something that you're interested in that's, quotes a product pitch, that's fine, let us know. And if you are somebody who wants to do a product pitch, then let us know. And anything else you can think of. So as people on this call, if you would like to have the opportunity to do a lightning talk, we can do that. We can make some space on the Saturday and set aside some time, and you can do your talk in front of maybe a bigger audience and get some different feedback. So there we go. There's the QR code. £5 for a ticket or £10 with t-shirt, which is absolute bargain because it's cost us more than that. And it is 12th of December. Take the QR code. Please sign up. That's it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Steve, can you just go back to your slide there? Oh, you stopped sharing. Okay.
Yeah, I can fix that. Go on.
It's just because it's one of my least favorite photos of all time. And I just thought it'd be quite amusing to have a look at because it's your second slide. If you look in that top right hand corner, you'll see just 3 people in from the left. That's me trying November.
Over here. Yes.
No, over here. Yeah, just over the other side. The other side. 3 in from the left.
Behind Martin.
Just behind John Stevenson and Trish.
Oh, yes, sorry. Oh, on the wrong side, yes.
It is one of, honestly, I cannot believe I got talked into it and I had to open the conference and I've never looked as bad as that in my life.
Oh, I did have the opportunity to take a bigger picture of you put on here, but please don't. I'm trying to find, there is a wonderful picture of Simon Maple.
Black and white Bandito one.
With his famous moustache, yes.
That was amazing, yeah. He pulled it off though. I looked like a chuckle brother and it wasn't something I want to go back to. So I actually had 4 offers for lightning talks, if you can believe it, in the last 7 minutes. So thank you very much for all offering. And the lucky seat is going to go to Kabir, who I can see instantly regretting that offer. No, thank you very much. It makes me think maybe we should do an open mic thing afterwards, one week. So yeah, I might do that. But Kabir, obviously you've had all of 6 or 7 minutes to prepare this, so obviously expectations will be aligned. But let me just transfer give you the hosting here so you can share your screen. Okay, there you go. enjoy. Just need to go on.
Okay, thanks. Right, can you see my browser?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay, share. Okay, now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is actually something I'm going to demonstrate internally at our team face-to-face on Monday. I'll work for Red Hat on the Wildfire team, and this is also feeds into EAP, which is our supported product. So basically, Wildfire is a massive project. It contains loads and loads of Java modules. It's our application server. It has a dependency thing, which is also huge, called Wildfire Core, which is kind of another part of Wildfire. And together, these two kind of parent components contain hundreds and hundreds of Maven dependencies. So when people develop a new feature, they might essentially need some changes in Wildfire Core, something in a feature branch in one of these other components, which in turn might depend on changes in another feature branch for another component. So we want to test all this before we, sorry, my clicking around is a bit erratic. But so we basically need to kind of test all this in conjunction before doing final releases of any of the components, because sometimes code review might pick up on stuff which will feed back into needing to change the API in one of these components. So we're trying to come up with a way to kind of test all this in conjunction without doing any releases. So I've got a tool. Let's see if I've got some slides first. Right, so it'll be on GitHub Actions. So you basically trigger this with an issue in GitHub Actions, and there's a repository which kind of deals with all this CI stuff using GitHub Actions. So here we're defining the feature branch of a component called JBoss Remoting in some guy's repository on this branch. Then we do the Wildfire Core build, which is one of the main components of Wildfire, and we're saying to use my feature branch of Wildfire Core. I want to override the Java version to be used for this. And then some dependencies. So I'm saying I want to pull in this JBoss Remoting dependency. And this is the version property in the POM that it should be consumed to pull in this snapshot. And same for Wildfire. This pulls in Wildfire Core and use the dependency to have a feature branch. So to show you this kind of in real life, we have this issue here, right? So then this basically right, sorry about the messy order, but so basically we have in our repository, we have a GitHub workflow YAML file listening to the onIssue event. This issue then gets picked up by the workflow, and this kicks off the workflow job, which basically generates some YAML, which it pushes to another branch, right? And then this is generated, and oops, the slide's not working. Right, so this basically triggers the full CI run. So the full CI run basically looks something like, go down, so it's the remoting one. Right, so this is the example we've seen. So basically it will build everything. It parallelizes lots of stuff. So it first builds remoting. Then it builds Wildfire Core. Then it does all the Wildfire Core test suite stuff in parallel. It does the Wildfire build and all the Wildfire test suite stuff in parallel. So normally this takes like 4 or 5 hours to do sequentially like current CI. but with this current new setup, it basically takes something like an hour in practice. So that's really all I have, and it became a bit messier than I'd hoped. So I hope it goes better on Monday. But thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kabir. That was amazing. Thank you for pulling it out at such short notice as well. Did anyone have any questions at all for Kabir?
Well, did anybody understand what I was on about?
So
Anyone, any questions? Steve,
yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but a suggestion, because you've made me just write on the LJC Unconference content list. We should get somebody to come along and talk about GitHub Actions from the trenches. So we'd love to hear something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I've prepared a bit better, it should,
it
should be fine.
You just, the whole point of the conference is you don't have to do any slides. You just turn up and have a conversation. And if you've got something you want to show off, that's great, but it's never been, there's no expectation that you have to have canned presentations. It's just sharing information.
Yeah, I'll put in a link to this repository, which contains some other links, so you can read more about it if you're interested.
Thanks, Kabir. I saw there was a few other mics came off there. Carsten, did you have anything that you wanted to?
I got a question. Kabir, thank you for the talk. I've used GitLab, and with GitLab you can run, you can run builds as well, but you can run them on your own hardware. They've got this GitLab runner where you can just execute stuff on your own hardware. You don't have to run it in the cloud. Can you do the same thing with GitHub Actions? Have it been triggered by GitLab, but GitHub, but running on your own hardware?
Yeah, you can. So actually one major use case for us is to have our QE team get hold of these kind of custom built servers from random combinations of components to test the feature and to push this into the pipeline. So at the moment we're doing this with a self-hosted runner, which runs inside our VPN and which connects out to GitHub Actions. Since this repository is public, this is actually kind of a security flaw. So I'm going to kind of change this to do something else, but you can have your own runners. So,
thank you.
So you probably wouldn't want to put those inside the VPN and you should be fine. So I've put in a link to this repository here. This is a fork of the one that will go into the upstream wildfire organization over the weekend. And it contains some links to the tooling that I've written to kind of make this all happen.
Great, thanks, Kabir. Thank you for that. Sorry about turning your video off there. I was trying to stop the screen share, and I think I managed to blank you out completely. But
okay, no worries,
mate. Thank you so much for coming in and doing that on such short notice. Thought that was great. So okay, thank you everyone for joining us. So what we tend to do at this point is just sort of break from the sessions and then have a bit of a Q&A with people that have been there, done it, bought the t-shirt and spoken constantly, just to answer questions. I think a lot of people that have now spoken started by coming along to the Lightning Talks events, seeing them and then thinking, well, that looks fun, I could do that, and then get involved. And so we use this point to try and encourage you in the audience to get involved next time. And if you're seeing it and you think, yeah, I'll try that, then yeah, you've got some questions on your mind or anything like that, then at this point you can speak to people that have some thoughts and advice on that subject. So if you only came for the Lightning Talks, feel free to log off now. It's absolutely fine. But if you're interested in hearing what other people have to say, then stick around. And if you've got any questions as well at this point, feel free to just put them on the general channel and I can ask them, or just unmute your mic and ask away. So today we have Jim Goff and Steve Poole with us. So we have a very own distinguished engineer in Jim, with his name up in lights behind him there. I like that. And Steve has helped train God knows how many people to get up on stage and speak at IBM. So I've had them both on Q&As before, and I'm happy to share those. But yeah, so thank you both for being with us today. I'm going to start just with this one that comes up time and time again with almost everyone that signs up to our groups. I'm going to start with you, Steve, because obviously I know you've had this before. But when someone is sitting there, someone now is potentially watching this and thinking, well, what have I got to say that anybody would care about listening to? What advice would you give someone like that?
So I always say everybody has got a story, because everybody, at the end of the day, you are the expert in your life, and you've done something, you've done many things that somebody else would care about, because we're all on these learning curves, and there's somebody at every stage of it, and you're at some stage of it too. So anything that you've learned, you could share that with somebody else and they would benefit. So it's quite straightforward. You don't have to be an expert to start talking. You just need to know a little bit more than somebody else and just share what you learned.
Okay, Jim, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I draw it back to the first talk on generalization versus specialization. I think that as professionals, we're always learning. We always have something to learn, and we've always just learned something as well. Like, so there's always that sort of, it's not necessarily unique to our industry, but I think the pace at which our industry changes makes it quite a unique challenge. So the fact that somebody spent, like, for example, a month writing on something like really detailed. So I just spent a month writing on open API specifications. I find myself now, whenever anyone mentions that, I could talk in quite a lot of detail about that. But, you know, a year ago, I wouldn't have known that detail. And I always think that I did a talk a couple of years back, which was all the things that I wish I'd known 2 years ago. Like, so how can you shortcut things that you've already learned? And I think those types of things is these kind of mediums is a great way of just finding out about stuff that you don't know. So the fact that you might have spent doing something that wasn't, you found it was like maybe very detailed, I don't know, maybe it was or wasn't interesting. The fact that you're sharing that experience and what you learn will just help people shortcut like having to spend a month doing it themselves, and indeed then be able to focus on what they're interested in or what content they're interested in.
Okay, great. I see actually, Matthew, sorry to highlight, it comes straight to you there. Didn't realize you were still around. Anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I just, there's a type of talk which I have seen a few times and really enjoyed, which is, here's something we tried and it just didn't work, and here's why. And it doesn't, if you are thinking, you know, that based on like what Jim and Steve have just said, that you'd like to talk about something, but you're worried, you know, that your personal experience of things hasn't been like, you know, astonishingly successful and will blow people away, then there's always the kind of, you know, I tried this and it was a terrible idea. The one talk in that vein that really springs to mind is the guy who tried to rewrite Doom 3 in Java. If you've ever seen that talk, I'll try and dig out a link, because he thought it would be something he could do over, like, you know, a couple of months, and it became something he slaved over for 3 years and still doesn't work very well. It's just like super engaging and really relatable talk. So yeah, I'll dig that out now and hand it back, Barry.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that. Sorry, I just looked up, saw you, and I thought, oh, I bet you've got something to share as well. Okay, so let's say you've arrived at what you want to talk about. You know what it is that you want to share. How do you find the story within your talk? How do you find the angle? How do you find a way to take all this huge amount of knowledge and put it into a short presentation? Any thoughts on that from any of you three?
Practice. So honestly, the way I do it is I start from the end. I'm working through and all this wonderful stuff that you've learned. What's the one thing you want your users to, your listeners or whatever, to take away, and then try and figure out how you explain that. So a lot of it is things like, what's the medium? Are you doing a video? Are you doing presentations? And how long you've got, and that tells you how deep you can go and sort of how far back you can go. But it's hard because you've got to take, as you say, you've got a lot of things to take through, but you need to have a good story arc, you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I tend to work from the end backwards because then I'm certain that I've covered the things I want to talk about.
Do you mind if I share something, Barry?
No, go ahead.
All right, let's see. So this is something that we worked on for a book. This is part of like our book chapter preparation. And we found this incredibly useful. I actually use this for my talks now as well, where we try and identify like the different parts and different aspects of what we're going to speak about, or in this case, write about, and assign that to the types of personas that we think are going to be interested. So in this case, we thought that, well, people are going to read our books and maybe kind of like the ivory tower architect. So be doing some architecture, not done some code for a while. Maybe you're a bit rusty, career or rusty architect, or you're a developer, or maybe even a hipster. So you've got some like really interesting technology. You're on the cutting edge. So what we tried to do is we tried to look at, well, what in our chapter story, what are people going to be interested in? And the first thing, for the reason why we did this was it helped us to balance, like, okay, if you read this section, you're going to find something interesting. Or there's this section that we might need to think about how we merge it to make it relevant to some of our other readers or listeners. And I know I've talked about this concept before at conferences. Depending on the conference, you'll get a different persona mix, and sometimes tailoring your content can be really, really useful. But I think this is the type of graphic that I think has been quite successful for us, which is to really map out the narrative. So I could talk to people about open API specifications and REST and all these other things, but if it doesn't sit in a story, if it doesn't sit in something that reveals and kind of takes, I guess, the reader or the listener on a, oh, that went wrong, why did that go wrong, and how can I make that better? It's going to be more difficult to relate to. And actually, lightning talks are quite nice because you can have something like a 5-minute talk which doesn't need to have much narrative. But once you start to extend over to like talking for 90 minutes, for example, you really do need to have a narrative, or you'll see that kind of thing in the back row. So what I tried to do with this was try and like take something which is like a sapling piece of knowledge. So you're going to learn about REST, and then we're going to talk about how REST is supported, and then how that fits in with things like API management and versioning. So you've almost got like that build up, and then there's this idea of, well, what are the problems with that, and how do you then go into the next piece? So REST can sometimes be slow, especially if payloads are large, the performance is worse. So then you can start to bring in other solutions and other types of things into the story. So in this example, things like you might want to explore binary formats, and once you get into binary formats, what's wrong with those? And we tried to just progress everything, and we've used this as an authorship team to talk through like how do we like convey all of the ideas that we want to get across to our reader, and how do we do that in a way that's going to not just be like lots and lots of information. And people relate to stories. And I sort of thought there were some great examples in the presentations today where people personalized their experience and personalized what they had done or what they had experienced. And I think that makes for a really good talk, because your narrative is your experience, and it's always a strong one.
That's really interesting. Can you bring that back up for me, Jim?
Oh yeah, sure. One sec. There we go.
I'm interested to understand how these icons relate to each other. So how one becomes another and then becomes something else. Do you mind just walking me through that again?
Yeah. So the the iconography is just whatever I could find.
Okay,
to
fair
be fair. But the idea is that you start off with a small piece of information. You've got to build it up. So you're sort of building up to like the tree is like the piece of information that you like, the key point or the key takeaway that you'd like the reader or the person within the talk to come away from that section with. So for us, like the start, like talking about REST is a path to talking about how APIs and versioning works. Right? So once we've got that defined, we can then talk about what's the problems with that. So you build up essentially this prerequisite knowledge, and then you can sort of build up something else as well. So for us, we've got the structure here that's coming from the chapter, which is all of essentially the trees that go into this this penguin at the end, or this penguin wizard, and that's just to annoy Daniel. Like there's no reason for that, because the ambassador logo is, I think it's supposed to be a blackbird, but I always say it's a penguin. So that's the only reason that icon is there, is to annoy Daniel Bryan. Like, there is no other reason. And it's got a wizard town. And then I guess the other thing is, well, how do we, in the book, we've got this angle of, well, we're going to bring people through the story in terms of in the chapter, but also we want to show examples and working solutions that people can play around with. And then that's where this kind of exploration or demo comes in. And especially when it gets to longer talks, you'll find that demonstrations or working software, it just brings everyone's attention in. And that's usually because they're waiting for something to go wrong. And invariably it usually does. So that's always a good way to re-engage an audience.
Really interesting, really interesting. Matthew, did you have anything you wanted to add to Jim or Steve at all on finding the story within it?
I agree completely with, like, having a narrative and fitting it to what you know about the audience. I think it's also important to notice that it is absolutely absolutely okay and recommended, but if you ask me, to give the same talk over, multiple times to different audiences. I've done that several times, and it's always slightly different, but you get to know the subject better, you get to modify it, you get to see what works and what doesn't, and that's a really good way of improving. You shouldn't feel that because you've given a talk once at one user group that therefore everyone's seen it and it won't fly at another user group.
Yeah.
I have to admit, like, one of my main talks, I think I've been giving it for about 4.5 years now. But it is complete. It's a complete. I've rewritten the talk so many times. It's like that whole, was it the Only Fools and Horses episode where he says, I've had this same broom for like 35 years, but I've changed the handle 20 times and the bottom of the brush like 30 times or something. Because you learn from the experience and you learn what's going to resonate with people. And I think, yeah, it started off as a talk about Java and Java execution, is now a talk about GraalVM. So you can certainly use those small increments and use that as a way to improve a talk over time.
Yeah, but I think what you said, Jim, right, was way at the beginning was you have to put some effort to understand the audience that you're going to be talking to, and if you don't do that, all sorts of bad things could happen.
How do you do that, Steve? How do you understand the audience? How do you put the right
You research. So you go find out what the event's about, and you go see what talks have been put up before in the previous year. You go see who some of the speakers are and see what they talk about. You go read the comments. I mean, you just have to research.
Interesting. Okay. All right. And just in closing, one final question that if anyone is thinking about talking is almost definitely on their mind. Nerves and how to handle them. Experienced speakers, were you ever nervous? Does it come easy? Do you still get nervous? Any thoughts on nerves?
Always nervous.
Even when you get asked to say something.
Yeah. What I do is I don't think this is so easy in virtual events. Spend the few minutes before the talk starts talking to people in the audience, just casually. And the other thing is to have practiced almost word for word, maybe the first 2 minutes of the talk, so that I get off to like a confident start. And then I find once I started, the nerves aren't such a problem. It's just the beginning for me that's the real issue. I'm interested to hear from others though.
So I don't get nervous very much anymore. I get nervous, the nerves come when I'm doing a new talk for the first time, because you're not quite sure how it's actually going to work out in practice, even though you may have rehearsed. I don't like doing presentations that other people have created. That upsets me because it doesn't fit my head, and that makes me nervous. And the only other thing that, and that's not really nerves, it's just when you're watching the audience, if they don't respond to you, that can be interesting feeling too, because when you're speaking, you're always trying to figure out whether the audience is paying attention to you and following along. And if you're not getting the nodding heads or whatever, that can be problematic. But then you also have to understand the culture of the people you're talking to, because sometimes you go to places in the world where nodding would not happen.
That is so true. And actually some places where it will be the shake of the head that's the thing that's actually a positive sign that things are going well. And if you haven't kind of appreciated some of those cultures in the past, it can be a bit daunting. I certainly spent a lot of time like teaching in China and India, and various different traits that you'll see, like just the differences in like education, like in some cultures, asking a question is seen as a sign of like weakness. So you'll get no questions, and that doesn't mean you've done anything wrong necessarily. And it could be different because it's going to challenge you. But these are all things as an international speaker that knowing more about and experiencing firsthand is as good as anything. So I guess the question is getting, how do you get to that experience? But nerves is something that I think, yeah, I've had a lot of nerves over the years and having to deal with. I think possibly the worst bout of nerves was during the Java 1 community keynote in 2012, I think it was, with like the lights are so bright you can't see anyone sort of thing, and you're there for the first time and you realize that they're going to hit you. So the best thing to do is like figure out, well, how do you first of all like recognize that you are going to get nervous, and then how do you deal with those? So for me, I actually have physical reactions to being on stage. So my heart rate will rise quite significantly. So I think normally it'd be about 60 whatever, and then when I'm on stage sometimes it will be as high as 130. So for example, having a coffee before going on stage may not always be the best idea, because then it's going to be 150. It's like running on a treadmill or something. So there are things like that you can work out and sort of realize like how you kind of like control like essentially like the emotion, because you want emotion to come out, but you don't want necessarily nerves to come out as well. So it's all about practice. It's all about putting yourselves in those awkward situations within a group of people that you trust. And I found no better place to do that than within the London Java community, because you want to, like, when you get on that stage where you've got like the audience in front of you, you're at your first conference or you're giving your first big event talk at work, you don't want to have nerves then. Like, or if you do have them, you certainly want to know how to have dealt with them. And I think the only thing I can suggest is like this group has always been very supportive, like the LJC. I think the way I got started actually thinking of the Unconference was, my first talk was pretty much at the Unconference, and Lightning Talks at the LJC. And those are things that, you start off with them, you do small things, you kind of go away and go, ooh, could I have improved that? Did that work? Did that not work? You go to a different conference and the same material that you presented at Java 1 doesn't work at that conference. And it's just all a big learning experience. And I think the mentorship program, the stuff that Steve does and others, it's just really helpful, because you can ask the open question, get feedback. Feedback from these sessions is really useful. I know Carly has dropped off. I don't think she'll mind me saying that I think she's given that presentation once before, and you can immediately see like the differences and the changes that she's applied based on feedback and really personalized the delivery. And these things are all really positive, and it all comes from community. So the best thing to do is to just have a go that first time, probably be nervous. As long as you can say some words, it's okay.
Yeah. And you don't even have to do that as a speaking thing. If you have opportunities to just stand up, if you're a team leader, then just standing up in front of your team makes a difference. A lot of the nerves come from that first thing where you realize that you're going to have all these people looking at you. And if you're not used to that, that can get to you. So any opportunity you can have where you can just speak out in a crowd, whether it's your teammates or whatever, all those things help towards getting over that feeling of the big spotlight, because as we all know, in reality it's not really like that.
Yeah, no, great advice. Thank you all. I had a situation just recently where I've opened 120 plus events this year, so I should be experienced enough now to not worry about that kind of thing. But I had one recently where I just went to open it and I hit this slide deck and I saw myself, and I don't normally use slides, and instantly my throat closed. I couldn't talk. I couldn't get my words out, and it was so discomforting. I think just from everyone I've spoken to, it's just a common thing. You put yourself in a slightly different situation and you're going to feel it. So the more you can, what they call it, exposure therapy, I think it was Denise, you said, just get yourself doing it as much as you can, taking one step further out. And the other one was Venkat. We interviewed Venkat the other day, and he said someone was putting his mic on. Like, you'd think Venkat could not get nervous with the amount of, how people speak about him and his reputation. but someone was putting his mic on, and she said, "You seem really nervous." And he said, "I am." She said, "Well, haven't you done this like 300 times before, 10,000 times before?" He said, "Yeah." And she said, "Why are you nervous?" He said, "Because I'm about to speak to hundreds of people." And it's just like, that's it. Like for most people, this is hard, no matter how experienced, what you're good. This is a nerve-wracking thing. So yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for hanging around. Please join us. Please come to the unconference. Steve, we've got a link there. So yeah, please do check it out. And if you see anything on LinkedIn about it, even if you can't get there, if you could just do a quick like or reshare or anything like that, be great to see you there. So yeah, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Barry. Bye then.
Thanks, Barry. Have a good weekend.